So there's a lot of debate of what makes a good shonen anime. People have argued over it for what seems like forever. So here is my personal criteria for how to rank certain shonen or shonen-esque anime. Number 1, plot. I've noticed with a lot of shonen, sometimes the plot can be really good or really inconsistent. A good example of this is an anime like Full Metal Alchemist. As you open with the first episode, it completely connects to the last episode, and I loved that. That story was beautifully written from beginning to end, and it didn't feel like there was unnecessary filler. I think an example of a mediocre anime in the plot area would be Naruto, because it did a really good job of bringing all the clan history to a head at the end, which was a very cohesive point throughout the show. But it had so much filler, that it was almost agonizing at times to try to get through it. But overall, good story. So an example of an anime that did not do good with plot is Bleach. I feel like Bleach had such a good start and such cool design themes and pulled from like different cultures, but it just fell flat. It seemed like there were just so many plot holes, and that Ichigo kept getting more and more powers every time that something went wrong with the story, and it felt like the writer was constantly backed against the wall and then took lazy ways out to keep the story going. So that one gets kind of an F for me. Like, why in the world did he need to be a Quincy and a bunch of other 1,000 things? It just doesn't make sense, and the main character seemed unrelatable at that point. My second category is actually my favorite, which is continuous action. I love anything explosions, swords, guns, all of it. So that's what shonen is known for, so all of them should be great, right? Well, not so much. To start out with an example of a good shonen-esque anime that with continuous action is Yu Yu Hakusho. Now I know Yu Yu Hakusho starts out really slow in the first beginning when Yusuke dies, but once we get into the fighting, and it brings beautiful continuous action like the Dark Tournament or the arc with Sensui. It's just great. Once Yusuke becomes a spirit detective, I feel like I'm constantly on the edge of my seat with non-stop action. An example of a mediocre one to me personally was Full Metal Alchemist. Because it was so plot heavy and really good with the story, I felt like it did need to have less action, but that did bring it down for me some. We had episodes that were just really dialogue heavy versus the fighting scenes that I really like to see. So it was kind of just okay for me in that area. Now the anime that is notoriously bad for pauses in between action is, you guessed it, Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball can be such a great fighting anime with great fighting scenes, but the non-stop screaming
No, stop it, Goku!
and pausing to build drama, I guess, is so frustrating. When you have such good fights, why? Why do that? That's why I consider it to be a little lower on the continuous action spectrum. Another big one for me, and my third category, is character development. Now, shonen obviously isn't notorious for like big, huge character development, unlike the drama animes of the world, but one of my favorites for character development, which might be a surprise to most people, is Naruto. Naruto started out as the most annoying
Come back here! When I get my hands on you, you crossed the line this time!
nail-grating character known to shonen. He was just always loud and obnoxious, but he changed so much in the end, and even into Boruto, where he is just a respectable, hardworking, thinking ninja as compared to the him of the past. And I think that that anime shows really how hard work can get you to a way better place in life. And I give it a big thumbs up for that because he became a very lovable character and almost one of my favorite characters to this day. The anime that I place in the mediocre category for this is Dragon Ball. Unlike Naruto, Dragon Ball's main character doesn't really change much at all, but his side characters do a lot. You see a lot of really good character development in characters like Vegeta and Piccolo and the androids, all of which started out evil or egotistical or just downright cruel, and end up becoming like a good family man like Vegeta, a caring adopted father like Piccolo, and just a forest ranger like Android 17. So I feel like it had a lot of really good character development throughout that show for the side characters. Unfortunately, not so much for Goku, but hey, we won in some areas. So one of my favorite shonen-like animes actually gets the worst in this category, and that's Fairy Tail. Unfortunately, I haven't seen much of a change in any of the characters from the beginning of the manga till the end. Natsu always dumb-wits his way out of fights. Lucy is still Lucy. And the rest of the guild, I don't see a whole lot of character development in. I guess you could argue some for maybe Kana, but other than that, they have all stayed the same, which I kind of get because that's the whole appeal of the show, but I would have liked to seen some maybe smarter moves on Natsu's part, or Lucy to get a little tougher in any way whatsoever, and maybe Gray to stop taking his clothes off, but nothing. A lot of everyone's favorite category, and my number 4 is good villains. So Shonen sometimes has a lackluster of villains, and then they have some really good villains. An example of a really freaking great villain would be Makoto Shishio from Rurouni Kenshin, which is my favorite anime, by the way. This guy has it all. He has the violence, the rage, you love to hate him. He has a good reason for why he's freaking crazy. He's such a good fighter. He's just fun to watch. So his whole motive is to take down a corrupt government, even though he kind of doesn't have the greatest idea of doing it, but he is just from beginning to end fun, relatable, and just great to watch. A mediocre villain, in my opinion, who's still fun, but I don't quite get where he's coming from. I guess it might be because I'm still a little bit early on in the series, is from Hunter x Hunter, and that is Hisoka. Hisoka is just fun to watch. I love his fighting style. Unfortunately, I don't really understand his motives, and he has a little bit of pedophilia tendencies that I'm not super fond of. But overall, he's fun, he's a good fighter, and he makes that show more interesting. As far as villains that just don't do a lot, literally, I would have to give that to Naraku. Naraku is just, he's so lazy, and I don't even know what he does. His motive is stupid. It's based on like a love triangle. He just sits around in some random abandoned shack all day and gets his lackeys and clones to do things for him. And every time you think he's dead, he's not. He's boring. He's unimaginative. I don't like the way he fights. There's nothing about him that makes me want to watch him. The last category some people might not care about or even think about, and that is representation of women and minorities. The shonen or shonen-esque anime that absolutely knocks it out of the park with representation is Fullmetal Alchemist. I think the writer did an absolute awesome job of being inclusive, from characters like Scar to Lieutenant Hawkeye to Major General Armstrong. There's just an abundance of wonderful, strong characters from different backgrounds in this show, and women characters that I could personally look up to because they're strong and collected and intelligent. And I just felt like this show did a really good job of showing different cultures and different backgrounds, and this is a great show. A show that I think tried but kind of failed in some ways, and my mediocre pick is Naruto. So Naruto had cool characters like Killer Bee and his entire clan to represent minority groups, but it failed so hard for me when it came to women. Most of the women in that show were useless. And then the more powerful women in that show, for example, like Tsunade, used her ability to keep her young. So I feel like it could have done better in that category, but there were some good points to it. My example for a worst anime in this category is Dragon Ball, Mr. Popo. So feel free to tell me in the comments below if you agree with me, disagree with me, and what your rubric is on scoring shonen, or if you just don't care and just watch it for a good time. Thank you. Sophie, like I really